The hulking alien fell dead onto the blood-soaked dirt as Lieutenant Jack Thompson pulled his combat knife free from the war beast's skull. The last of hundreds he and his loyal dog, Rex, had slaughtered this day on the scorched battlefield of Zephiria. Jack wiped thick, foul-smelling alien blood from his brow with a torn sleeve as he surveyed the carnage before him. Hundreds of genetically engineered alien killing machines lay still as smashed crab apples, while a few final death gurgles escaped cracked throats around him. Just moments ago, these abominations had howled in bloodlust, hurling themselves at the lone human with reckless abandon, eager to shred flesh from bone with dagger-like teeth and razor-sharp claws. One by one, they all fell before the human's onslaught. Rex let out a triumphant bark, tongue lolling out the side of his mouth as he trotted over to his master, seemingly grinning. The faithful German shepherd was caked head to toe in blue gore, but his eyes shone bright with the thrill of hard-fought victory. Together, this unconquerable pair had faced down the latest waves of monstrous horrors unleashed by the cruel Tarian Empire to crush the Zerian rebellion. Genetically perfected alien war beasts, each one easily capable of dismembering an unaugmented man, were specifically engineered to slaughter humans without mercy, all to terrorize a planet into submission. But this time, they made a fatal mistake. They had never faced anything like Jack Thompson and his dog, Rex. The rebels needed them to hold the line here, to buy time for civilians to be evacuated before the Tarians unleashed the next salvo of nightmares. If the beasts broke through, it would mean a massacre of unimaginable proportions. Millions of innocent lives snuffed out or enslaved on the Tarian whims. Jack was all too familiar with the Tarian Empire's ruthless tactics. He'd lost many friends to their war beasts before, barely escaping as an entire mercenary company was butchered like lambs. Now, he was the only thing standing between them and the total annihilation of the Zerian resistance. A sleek black dropship descended from the ruddy skies, hovering over the battlefield like a steel vulture. Jack gripped his pulse rifle tighter, knowing all too well what came next. The dropship's bay doors yawned open with a hiss, revealing a tall, lithe figure striding out onto the planet's scorched surface, metallic armor glinting in the fading daylight. It was Alara, one of the Tarians' most vicious and cunning commanders, a master strategist responsible for countless atrocities across the galaxy. "You may have won this battle, human, but you're only delaying the inevitable," Alara sneered, bearing rows of wickedly sharp chromium fangs. Her cold black eyes surveyed the piles of war beast corpses with detachment and disdain. "The might of the Tarian Empire will crush you and your pathetic allies." Jack hawked a wad of bloody phlegm on the ground, a defiant smirk playing on his grizzled features. Rex growled deep and menacing beside him, tensed and ready to strike at his signal. "You haven't met Rex and me yet," Jack called back, voice unwavering. "We'll take on anything you throw at us." Alara's facial plates twisted into a cruel approximation of a smile. "We shall see, human. I have 1,000 more war beasts ready to tear you apart at my command. This planet will be mine, and your head will adorn my trophy wall." With that, the alien commander turned on her heel and strode back into the dropship, the doors snapping shut behind her as the craft lurched into the air, receding into the horizon. Jack felt a familiar, calloused hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Zara, leader of the Zerian resistance. Her obsidian skin shone with sweat and spattered blue blood. Her dark eyes held a mixture of gratitude and grim determination. "Thompson, we owe you our lives yet again," she said solemnly. "But Alara will return, likely with an entire legion at her back. My people have no one else to turn to. I know it's asking the impossible." Jack gave a curt nod, casting his gaze to the angry red sunset, a strange calm washing over him. One man and his dog making a stand against an empire's might and all their alien horrors, just the way he liked it. "The impossible is what we do best, Zara. Max and I, we fight until the very end. We'll show these Tarian bastards what humanity is made of, even if we have to tear them apart one by one with our bare hands." Jack's calm crackled to life as he caught his breath, Rex's fur still bristling as the faithful dog kept watch for any remaining threats. The voice on the other end was panicked, urgent.
Thompson, come in.
This is Outpost Theer. We're under heavy assault by Tarian forces.
Waar beast's Iwer weer?
We can't hold them off much longer. Hold tight, Theer. Rex and I are on our way, Jack responded tersely, already sprinting towards their heavily armed hoverbike. He swung a leg over the saddle as Rex leaped into the sidecar, engines roaring to life. They tore across the battle-scarred landscape, the acrid stench of burnt metal and alien blood still heavy in the air. Tarian patrols filled the skies, black dropships and attack craft sweeping the area for any signs of rebel activity. Jack wove between rocky outcroppings and dense patches of foliage, narrowly avoiding detection. Plasma blasts scorched the earth behind them, but he never let up on the throttle. As Greg and Max approached the outpost, the sounds of combat intensified, filled with screeches, roars, and the desperate battle cries of the rebels. Cresting a hill, Greg saw the outpost engulfed in chaos, with a horde of war beasts overwhelming the rebels' weakening defenses. Atop a rocky outcropping stood Aurora, commanding his monstrous soldiers with cold precision. Greg revved the hover bike's engines and charged down the hill. Max leaped from the sidecar, teeth bared. They hit the Tarian ranks like a thunderbolt, pulse rifle flashing and jaws snapping. War beasts fell left and right, but for each one defeated, two more seemed to take its place. Aurora's metallic features twisted into a snarl as he locked eyes on Greg and Max. He barked commands into his comm unit, and suddenly the war beasts retreated into the surrounding wilderness as quickly as they had appeared. The rebels, weapons lowered, stood in exhaustion and confusion. However, Greg's instincts screamed a warning honed by countless battles against the Tarians' evolving tactics. "Take cover," Greg shouted, diving behind a shattered wall, just as the ground erupted in a shower of dirt and stone. Camouflaged war beasts burst from hidden tunnels, teeth gnashing and claws slashing. The rebels were caught off guard, many dragged screaming into the darkness before they could even raise their weapons. Greg and Max fought with renewed fury, desperate to stem the tide of death. But the war beasts kept coming, an endless stream of horrors pouring from the tunnels. Aurora's cruel laughter echoed over the carnage. "See, human," he called from his perch. "I don't need 1,000 beasts to defeat you. I just need to be smarter than you." Greg gritted his teeth, pulse rifle blazing as he tried to shield a group of wounded rebels. Max darted back and forth, jaws red with alien blood. Despite their efforts, Greg knew Aurora was right. Brute force alone wouldn't win this war. The Tarian commander anticipated their every move. As rebels fell around him, a cold realization settled in Greg's gut. If they hoped to prevail, to save Zephiria and countless other worlds from Tarian cruelty, he would need to outthink Aurora. But first, they had to survive this battle. Reloading his rifle, Greg charged back into the fray, Max at his side. They fought to buy time for the rebels to regroup and evacuate the wounded. Weary and battered, the group took refuge in a damp cave. The cold stone walls offered meager comfort as they tended to their wounds, haunted eyes staring into crackling flames, remembering fallen comrades. Medics moved among them, applying salves and bandages to bites and gashes. Greg winced as antiseptic stung a deep cut on his forearm, Max whimpering softly at his side. He patted the dog's head. "We'll get that bastard next time, boy. We have to." Suddenly, excited murmurs rippled through the cave. A rebel scout pushed his way to Greg, panting. "Crawford, I've got news. Big news." Aurora's command ship was spotted at a supply depot not far from here. The wheels turned in Greg's mind, a plan taking shape. This could be their chance to cripple the Tarian war machine and take out Aurora in one fell swoop. "I need every scrap of intel you've got on that depot. Security layout, guard rotations, everything." As the scout rattled off details, Greg turned to his team, a fierce light in his eyes. "I'm going in. I'll sabotage their war beast control systems and rig the place to blow. And if I can get to Aurora..." He left the rest unsaid. Max whined, sensing the danger. Greg scratched behind his ears, soothing the dog. "I know, buddy, but we have to do this. For the rebels, and for everyone else the Tarians have hurt." Night cloaked their approach to the depot. Greg and Max slipped past patrols with stolen access codes, moving like ghosts as they planted explosives at critical junctions. Just a few more charges, and they could slip away, leaving chaos in their wake. Alarms shattered the silence, a piercing wail that set Greg's heart hammering. "We've been made. Go, Max. Go." They sprinted through twisting corridors, pulse fire sizzling past as guards shouted. Greg snapped off shots on the run, downing Tarians left and right. Max's jaws flashed, ripping into chrome flesh. Greg kicked open the control room door and froze. Aurora stood waiting, a cruel smile on his metallic face. Hulking shapes emerged from the shadows around him. His elite war beasts, nightmares of fangs and claws. "Did you really think it would be that easy, human?" Aurora sneered. "I knew you couldn't resist the chance to strike at me directly. Your predictability is your weakness." Greg raised his rifle, his aim unwavering. Max snarled at his side, ready to pounce. "Maybe so, but your arrogance is yours. You underestimate us, Aurora. That's a mistake you'll regret." A fierce battle cry tore from Greg's throat as he opened fire, Max surging forward in a blur of fur and fury. Explosions shook the compound, the charges igniting in a chain of thunderous booms. Aurora roared as his beasts leaped to the attack. Pulse blasts lit up the room, teeth and claws flashing in a whirlwind of savagery. Greg and Max fought as one against the onslaught, steel and sinew against the Tarians' twisted creations. Steel clashed on steel, and claws rent flesh as they battled Aurora's elite war beasts in the heart of the Tarian compound. For every beast that fell, another leaped forward to take its place. Greg ducked under a swiping claw and drove his knife into a war beast's neck, hot blood spraying his face. Max darted between the creatures, biting at limbs and hamstringing them for Greg to finish off. But the war beasts kept coming, an unrelenting tide of snarling death. Greg found himself being driven back, his rifle clicking empty. He reached for another magazine, but a beast lunged, knocking him to the ground. Struggling to keep its razor-sharp fangs from his throat, Greg fought with everything he had, Max by his side. A furious bark suddenly rang out, and Jack slammed into the creature, knocking it off Tom in a flurry of fur and teeth. Dog and creature rolled across the floor in a vicious tangle, Jack's jaws clamped tight around the creature's neck. Then came a piercing yelp that cut Tom to his core. Jack tumbled away from the creature, a smoking hole in his side. Zara stood over the fallen dog, plasma pistol aimed at Jack's head. Rage consumed Tom, a red mist descending over his vision. He charged Zara with a roar, tackling the alien commander to the ground. They grappled for the gun, trading devastating blows. Tom felt bones crack under his fists, but he didn't care. All that mattered was making Zara pay. His fingers closed around the pistol, and he wrenched it free, pressing the barrel to Zara's chest. The alien's eyes widened in shock as Tom pulled the trigger, sending Zara crashing to the floor in a smoking heap. But there was no time to savor the victory. Explosions rocked the compound, the walls cracking and buckling. Tom scooped up Jack, cradling the wounded dog in his arms as he sprinted for the exit. Debris rained down around them, the very air seeming to burn. With a final desperate lunge, Tom burst from the compound just as it erupted in a massive fireball. The shockwave sent him tumbling, Jack clutched tight to his chest. Searing heat washed over them as Tom rolled across the ground, shielding Jack with his body. When the roar faded and the dust began to settle, Tom uncurled himself, looking down at Jack. The dog's flank was scorched and bloodied, but he was still breathing. "Hang in there, buddy," Tom whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We're going to get you patched up. You did good today. Real good." Staggering to his feet, Tom cradled Jack in his arms and began the long trek back to the rebel hideout. Each step was agony, his body battered and burned, but Tom pushed on, his jaw set with iron determination. They had struck a mighty blow against the aliens today. Zara was dead, his compound destroyed. But Tom knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would retaliate with all their might. And with Jack wounded, Tom would have to face them alone. It was a sobering thought, but Tom was no stranger to impossible odds. He had faced them time and again with Jack at his side. And though his faithful companion could not fight beside him now, Tom knew Jack's spirit would always be with him. Together, they had shown the aliens the indomitable will of humanity. And Tom would continue to fight to his last breath, if need be, to ensure that will triumphed over alien cruelty. Tom burst into the medical bay, Jack limp and bleeding in his arms. "Help him!" he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. Rebel medics swarmed around them, gently lifting Jack onto a gurney and rushing him into surgery. Hours crawled by as Tom paced the hallway, his boots wearing a groove into the concrete. He couldn't sit still, couldn't breathe. Jack was his everything, his reason for fighting, for living. The thought of losing him was unbearable. The doors hissed open, and a doctor emerged, her face drawn and tired. Tom's heart seized in his chest. "How is he?" he asked. "We've done all we can," she said softly, placing a hand on Tom's shoulder. "But his injuries are severe. He may not make it through the night." Tom's knees buckled, and he sagged against the wall, a strangled sob tearing from his throat. This couldn't be happening. Not Jack. Not after everything they'd been through. He stumbled into the recovery room, collapsing into a chair beside Jack's bed. The dog lay still, his fur matted with blood, tubes and wires snaking from his body. Tom reached out a trembling hand, gently stroking Jack's head. "You can't leave me, buddy," he whispered, hot tears spilling down his cheeks. "We still have so much fight left in us." The hours ticked by, Tom never leaving Jack's side. He talked to him, reminisced about their adventures, and promised him all the treats and belly rubs in the world if he just held on. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the base. Tom's comm crackled to life. "All units, we have incoming alien forces. They are massing for an attack." Tom's blood ran cold. The aliens were coming, no doubt seeking revenge for Zara's death. And here he was, helpless at Jack's bedside while his fellow rebels fought and died. He looked down at Jack, torn between his duty and his heart. But then, a miracle. Jack's eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain but still full of that indomitable spirit. His tail thumped weakly against the bed. Tom leaned down, pressing his forehead to Jack's. "You rest now, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll finish this for both of us." He grabbed his pulse rifle and sprinted out of the medical bay, a new fire burning in his veins. He would make the aliens pay for what they'd done to Jack, to all of them. The battle was already raging when Tom reached the front lines. Creatures swarmed over the rebel defenses, alien soldiers laying down a withering hail of plasma fire. Tom charged into the fray, his rifle spitting death with every squeeze of the trigger. He fought like a man possessed, grief and rage fueling his every move. Creatures fell before him, alien soldiers crumpling under his relentless assault. But for every enemy he faced, two more seemed to take their place. Tom's rifle clicked empty, and he cursed, reaching for another magazine. But a creature lunged, its claws raking across his chest. Tom cried out in pain, stumbling back. The creature pounced, bearing him to the ground. This was it. This was how he would die, torn apart by alien abominations while Jack lay dying back at base. Tom closed his eyes, waiting for the end. But it never came. A furious bark split the air, and suddenly the creature was gone, knocked aside by a blur of fur and teeth. Jack stood over Tom, his flanks heaving, blood seeping from his bandages. "Jack!" Tom scrambled to his feet, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. "You crazy son of a... What are you doing here?" Jack just licked his face, his tail wagging. He was where he belonged, at Tom's side, no matter the odds. Together, they turned to face the alien horde, pulse rifle and fangs flashing as one. Creatures fell left and right, soldiers scattering before the unstoppable duo. The aliens wavered, then broke, fleeing before the human and his dog. The rebels cheered as Tom and Jack limped back into the base, battered and bloodied but unbroken. They had won the day, but the war was far from over. Tom knelt beside Jack, running his fingers through the dog's fur. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured. Jack nuzzled his hand, his eyes shining with love and loyalty. No matter the threats they faced, no matter the odds, they would always have each other. And together, they would keep fighting until the alien threat was nothing but a memory. For the rebels, for the innocent, and for the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. Thank you for reading this story. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.